I shall begin. Good afternoon. My partner, Rachel McHenry, and I, Victoria Solano, stand firmly resolved that the American Alliance of Museums should adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission into all art museums. I would like to begin by defining the terms of our resolution. AAM, or is the American Alliance of Museums, the American Alliance of Museums has been bringing museums together since 1906, helping to develop standards and best practices, gathering and sharing knowledge, and providing advocacy on issues of concern to the entire museum community. Representing more than 35,000 individual museum professionals and volunteers, institutions, and corporate partners serving the museum field, the Alliance stands for the broad scope of the museum community. The source is from aam-us.org. Art Museum, a non-profit, permanent institution in the service of society and its development, open to the public, which acquires, conserves, researches, communicates, and exhibits the tangible and intangible heritage of humanity and its environment for the purposes of education, study, and enjoyment. From icom.museum. Policy. A high-level overall plan embracing the general goals and acceptable procedures, especially of a governmental body. Nationwide, extending throughout a nation. And admission, a fee paid at or for admission. All from Merriam-Webster.com. Observation 2, harms. The problem with our status quo now is that there is no universally free access to art museums. Under observation 1, less people are willing to visit. Less people are willing to visit. From Denver Post journalist Ray Mark Rinaldi, museum leaders are recognizing that admission fees, even small ones, create barriers that need to come down. People routinely list price as a major factor when surveys ask why they don't attend art museums more often. Minorities, low-income areas, and large families are especially challenged with this. Christopher Knight said in his article in the LA Times, in addition to MOCA, there's the Huntington General Admission $20 to $23, LA County Museum of Art $15 to $25, and Norton Simon Museum $12. Christopher Knight listed the prices of admission in those museums. Under observation 2, art is education, not entertainment. Art is education, not entertainment. Museums are supposed to be educational, not entertainment, but placing an admission fee turns it into an entertainment center. From the co-chief art critic of New York Times, Roberta Smith says, to justify the very existence of fees, this country's museums have come to cast themselves as a blend of popular entertainment, corporation, and school. To pay the same price for a pop concert to go and see a Warhol is completely absurd. From Christopher Knight, admission fees turn visitors into customers, and relying on customers turns an educational enterprise, which is what a museum is, into a public entertainment facility. Under observation 3, admission fees are very expensive. Admission fees are very expensive. The definition of an art museum specifically states a museum is a non-profit institution. Museums are non-profit charitable institutions whose sole purpose is to provide an education and cultural experience to visitors. From Daniel Grant, a Boston Globe reporter. Museums only use a small percentage of money collected from admission fees. Roberta Smith says in her article, according to the Association of Art Museum Directors, museums earn an average of 5% of their revenue from admissions. Our plan is to adopt a nationwide policy that requires all art museums to have free admission. Our mandate is that the AAM will adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission to art museums. It will be enforced by each museum that would be under this policy. The funding would be donations, donors, private funding, and if needed, government grants. Our advantages would be equal opportunity for everyone to attend art museums, People are more connected to art and donations. My partner and I stand resolved that the AAM should adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission to all art museums. And I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Is the timekeeper ready? Judge? Do you agree with the AAM?
Do I agree with the AAM?
Yes.
I do, yes.
Do you agree with their constitution?
As I have not seen the Constitution, I cannot give you a complete answer on that.
Okay. What are your sources that say that less people visit?
For less people visit, as in, where would that be under in your notes?
I just wrote down less people visit.
I don't believe I said anything about less people visit.
Okay. Who is Christopher Knight?
Oh wait, I'm sorry, I should restate that. Less people are willing to visit, that was one of my observations. It's from journalist Ray Rinaldi on the Denver Post.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
30 seconds.
You have 3 minutes, and he can tell you every 30 seconds to let you know how much you
Yeah.
you are.
Is the judge ready? Is the timer ready?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Curry. Me and my partner stand firmly resolved that the AAM, American Alliance of Museums, should not adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission to all art museums. Me and my partner accept the affirmative team's definitions. To start things off, I'd like to address solvency. One of the problems that the affirmative team addressed was that not all people are able to go, and so they also mentioned that the prices of most museums range from around $15 to $23. But if you are not able to afford that admission price, or do not want to, take it, you have bigger problems than going to an art museum. You need to be more worried about providing for your family or not starving than let's say deciding which of your Da Vinci paintings is your favorite. Also, I'd like to address inherency. The problem of people not being able to go, and the harm of people not getting inspired by the art museums is not inherent to the admission prices, because with the admission prices, if let's say you're going into a museum, would you appreciate the art more if you had to pay for it and were trying to get your money's worth, or if you had gotten in free and were simply skimming by all the museums because you had nothing better to do? If you pay for an art museum, you are more likely to try to get your money's worth out of it instead of simply acknowledging the paintings and kind of, you don't have that burden of trying to get what you paid for if you do not have to pay the admission price. And then also with the people who are not able to go to museums because the admission price is too high, is not inherency, because the admission price has very, very little to do with the people who are not able to go to art museums, because the admission price of the art museum has nothing to do with why they are not able to go, because they, either got fired from a job or just simply do not get paid enough money to go to an art museum. That's a problem in and of itself, and is not caused by the art museum. I have no further questions. I have no further, whatever. I now stand ready for cross-examinations.
Is the timekeeper ready from the judge? Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, to begin, in your own personal stance, do you think that you would enjoy the art more if it was free or if you had to pay for it?
I think you would enjoy it more if you had to pay for it, because you would be more interested in actually being more careful about using your time and money well, and you are, really examining the art because you paid for it and you're trying to get your money's worth.
All right. What is the definition of inherency?
Inherency. I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question. I do not have it.
Then I have no further questions. Thank you.
Timekeeper, Judge, are you ready? So first off, I would like to start off where my opponent did not get to finish. So she did not get to finish our plan. For our funding, it would be by donations, donors, and private funding, and if needed, government grants. The art museum will not be allowed to drop financially and cease to exist. Rather, they will be funded using all the means previously stated. I will now go into advantages. It will be equal opportunity for everyone to attend art museums. Equal opportunity for everyone to attend art museums. Minorities and low-income areas and large families would be able to attend art museums without the restricting barrier of costly admission prices. People are more connected to art. People are more connected to art. By removing admission, more people can go freely and absorb the beauty, wonder, and history of art. Art, freedom, and creativity will change society faster than politics. From Viktor Pinchuk, a Ukrainian billionaire and philanthropist. Donations. Quoted from Roberta Smith, eliminating admission fees can attract new community support. When the Contemporary Art Museum in Houston stopped charging admission in 1995, public donations increased to make up the lost income. Donating would also bring the donor closer in a more personal way to the art in the museum. The American Alliance of Museums said on their website that museum was constructed in 2012 by private donations, with the value being estimated about $1.353 billion. This shows that there is more than a sufficient amount of funding. I would now like to go into what my opponent said. He talked about solvency and how there are bigger problems. Well, we really want to have equality for everyone. Even though they might have bigger problems, going to a museum with their family might help them to see that might help them to have a little bit of relaxation time, and they can bring their families, which they wouldn't be able to do normally. Also, my opponent argued about inherency, and that people appreciate art more with more money. And the definition of inherency are the harms caused by current system. So, I would like to say, what about art lovers? Even though some people might appreciate art more by the more they spend, other people really value art for itself and not for the price they have to pay. It is also a great way for families and other people to show their children, and their children can appreciate art and they can pass that on if they're not able to pay normally. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Good.
So you talked about how donations increased. If let's talk about the smaller, art museums that are just starting up. If they're required to go free, and the donors are not as active because they had just started off, what will happen to the art museum?
Well, then we would go into our backup plan, which is government grants. They could always get a government grant, and this would be a good immediate way to fill the gap. There are also other donors who would be willing to donate in other states or other areas.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Is the timer ready? Is the judge ready? Good afternoon. My partner Sam Curry and I stand firmly resolved that federal art museums should not be required to be free. The Affirmative stated they agree with the American Association of Museums. In the Constitution of the AAM, which is the American Association of Museums, in Chapter 5, Section 1, it states clearly, no financial obligation shall be contracted without express sanction of the Board of Directors. I'd like to ask if they've gotten that. If they've gotten that express sanction from the Board of Directors. Also, according to the American Association of Museums, the earned income of the average museum is 27.6%. If we would take out admission, that number would lose around half. Where would we make up the rest of the cost it takes to run a museum? The government already gives 24.4% to the average museum, so increasing taxes would just increase the government giving. Art museums are also losing funding. The National Endowment for the Humanities, which is government giving, was cut from $167.5 million to every museum in the United States. Well, not to everyone, but like sharing all that money across the whole United States was cut to $146 million. Also, by removing admission fees, people that should be working and putting food on their plate are instead in an art museum. Thank you, and I'll stand ready for cross-examination.
Judge, timekeeper, are you ready? First, I would like to ask, so you said that half of the 27.6% of that, of their total financials would be cut. Where is your evidence for that?
I did not say 27.6% of their total financials would be cut. 27.6% of their financials come from, let's see, it's the average admission and renting that they get. And the renting is far less than half of it, but half of 27.6 is just to be safe.
Okay. And also, and what you brought up in the Constitution is true. Would the funding specified be from the AAM or other means?
Well, the American Association of Museums Constitution states that no financial obligation shall be contracted without express sanction of the Board of Directors.
Okay, thank you.
Great. No questions?
What?
Do you want to use
Is Judge ready? Thank you, ready?
that? Please.
Okay. So for my rebuttal, I really only have one major point I want to stress. Is it better to sell off art museum's treasures, such as paintings, to cut back on staff, or to charge an entrance fee? Because that money has to come from somewhere. You have to, as my partner pointed out, the government is already in debt. And when you add more to that, it's just, that gets bigger. So wouldn't it be better to simply just avoid that altogether? I mean, the harms are not significant enough to add to the government debt. Also, I cannot pronounce his name. Dylan Schrender found that not having interest fee does not actually help bring in new audiences all that much. Her first piece of evidence was Volker Kinsberg's 1998 analysis. Entrance fees at subjective is a subjective barrier to visiting museums. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
I would like to again repeat that we resolve that the American Alliance of Museums should adopt a nationwide policy requiring all art museums to have free admission. What the negative stated earlier is that by the percentage is very high, around 26-27% of revenue from admission and from renting out the building. But we would specifically eliminate admission, not renting out the building. That does not include, renting out the facilities does not include admission. Our evidence states that from the New York Times by Roberta Smith, according to the Association of Art Museum Directors, museums earn an average of 5% of their revenue from admissions. The Met, and the author also clarifies three other omissions to this 5%. The Met and the Whitney states their admission revenues constitute 12%, and the Modern says 15%. So although those ones aren't specifically 5%, in the average of the entire nation, it's only a 5% difference. The point that they brought up that a museum would have to sell away the treasures, as in the art, we would not let a museum get into that dire of a state. They would have enough funding to support their facility. Also, the negative brought up that the AAM says that they need a specific allowance from the board of directors on the AAM. But I believe that the AAM was stating that you would need a specific allowance from the board of directors to be funded by the AAM. You don't need a allowance from the AAM to give if you're a private donor. Private donors are allowed to do what they will with their money, and if they wish to support a museum, then they should be able to do so without any other outer interference. Again, I would like to say that we resolved that the AAM should adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission to all art museums. Thank you.
In the American Association of Museums, the Constitution states that no financial obligation shall be contracted without sanction of the Board of Directors. The affirmative did not address why they have not gotten the permission that they need, clearly stated in their Constitution. And the AAM Constitution was initially instituted to promote excellence within the museum community. Also, the grants that the public gives are not consistent. If we try to trust in something inconsistent, it will not always come through. Removing admission also would allow vandals that could possibly damage that very valuable art. And with museums, annual funding from the government already dropping from $167.5 million to $146 million, we need admission fees to keep them going, because otherwise the art will have to be sold to keep them going if we would do it the affirmative says. Thank you. That's it.
Judge, timekeeper, are you ready? Okay. I'd like to start off saying that Victoria and I still stand firmly resolved that the American Alliance of Museums should adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission into all art museums. I'm going to go back over my harms and my advantages. Less people are willing to visit. We have showed more than enough evidence for this. Also, admission fees are very expensive. In our plan, we stated multiple times that there would be donations and private funding, and that there would be donors. The negative said that we did not have sufficient evidence, but we stated it multiple times in our plan. Our plan specifically states that art museums will not be allowed to drop financially and cease to exist. Rather, they will be funded using all the means previously stated. I would also like to stress that only 5% of admission is used. Only 5% admission in museums only makes up 5% of the nationwide financials in museums. I'd also like to restate our advantages. We want equal opportunity for everyone to attend art museums. Minorities, low-income areas, and large families should be able to attend art museums without the restricted barrier of costly admission prices. Quoted from the co-chief art critic of the New York Times, Roberta Smith says, Doreen Bolger, director of the Baltimore Museum, told the Washington Post that the number of non-white visitors nearly tripled during the museum free hours. I also like to state that people are not connected to art. Art, freedom, and creativity will change society faster than politics. This is very true to our world today. I would also like to say that we stated multiple times and that we stressed that we do have enough funding and that donations are a sufficient fund. Thank you.
Yeah, you can just stand there. All right, the affirmative team also won this debate round. Very good job to both teams.